Good morning. Bonjour. My name is Jan Forster, and I'm the Manitoba Deputy Minister for Environment, Climate and Parks, and I'm very excited to be here with you today and welcome you to this historic announcement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are here today on the traditional territory of the Kainyan-Kayaka, which has long served as the meeting and exchange amongst a site of meeting and exchange amongst many First Nations, including the Kainyan-Kayaka, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron-Wendat, Abenaki, and Anishinaabe. We recognize and respect the Kainyan-Kayaka as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters on which we meet today. Protected areas not only play a vital role in conserving our natural environment, but they also serve to protect the cultural heritage of the peoples who have been on these lands for many generations. Located in northern Manitoba, the Seal River Watershed is a very special place. It's one of the world's largest remaining ecologically intact watersheds. This morning, we will hear from a number of distinguished representatives on how they are advancing the protection of this pristine landscape. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the Honourable Stephen Guilbeault, Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and Minister responsible for Parks Canada. Stephanie Thurasi, Executive Director of the Seal River Watershed Alliance, Adriana Bacheski, Director of Protected Areas Establishment with Parks Canada, and Marc-André Tremblay, Environment Canada Media Services. Joining us virtually are the Honourable Jeff Wharton, Minister of Manitoba Environment, Climate and Parks, and Mr. Ernie Busador, Senior Advisor and Founder of the Seal River Watershed Alliance. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Executive Director of the Seal River Watershed Alliance, Stephanie Thurasi.
Press the button, Steph. What's it? Aglanit Stephanie Thurasi Hushe. First, would really like to share with you that I had the honor of introducing our founder, senior advisor, and community elder, Ernie Busador, to start us off in a good way. You guys can play.
I wish people good morning on this another beautiful day that God gave us today. I'm sharing my greetings from the heart of the Seal River Watershed, Saïs First Nation community of Teduli Lake. And I'd like to start the day off by just a few opening words about our project and a prayer to start the day. But I think it's a wonderful concept to allow us First Nation people to take the lead in preserving and protecting a little piece of earth for future generations. Because natural, pristine wilderness is what's needed in this world, and there's very little of it. And we possess a nice, beautiful watershed that's worthy of protecting and preserving for future generations, for tourism opportunities. What see the scene doing the Ziniga Jan Saisin Dananagos and Huyastki, just a uli twelve, China I disya Tanizin. Chit I think in Nahide, use on sin. Dundi Ziniga Massin Udium, Dali, but I will show to Hestin Hog the Hasiko and I'd like to say good morning to delegates, visitors, interested people, participants, chiefs, and all manners of leaders from around the world. Good morning from the heart of the Saïs and Dene watershed to Dooley Lake, our little utopic community in the heart of the watershed where the two rivers converged, the South Seal and the North Seal River. I think it's a beautiful concept we're working on, and we're so thankful for the government to enable us, to give us the tools to enjoy working in our natural environment, protecting and preserving a piece of Mother Earth for all of us to enjoy, for our future generations to enjoy. And when I lay my head to sleep each day, I'm thankful that there's a positive future ahead for my children, my grandchildren, and the same for all of us elders in the community and within the Alliance, the Seal River Watershed Alliance. It's an amalgamation of communities that's standing firm to stand united in our affirmation to protect our watershed from hydro or from any other industry. And we'd like to preserve it and protect it for future generations to enjoy. And it's a beautiful opportunity for us, and it's been a blessing since day one. And it continues to be, and it's getting stronger and it's getting louder. And hopefully we can work together with governments to make this a beautiful place for all of us to enjoy, not just our people, but there's other nations of people that take part in this alliance, and it is for future investment, I guess, for our children. So I think cultural and ecotourism is a beautiful way to go, and I think we can make it work. We're in the midst of constant rejuvenation of our culture and revival of our language and traditions. And it's beautiful for us to showcase that with people around the world. And I think it's a wonderful idea to let the Aboriginal people deal and work with nature as we've always done, and to be recognized and acknowledged for it. And I think it's a beautiful joining of forces to protect a little bit of what's left of this earth. And we all need to breathe, and we all need to feed our children, and we all need healthy, clean water. And that's what we're trying to do, and we hope it works. And I thank you for listening to me today. I'll end it with a prayer for the day. We'll pray to the Creator. Dari ye no din tsare dundi zengo ha. Atine zunhani au no titi suwa ni au no hari no yaze bahabi. Kanu kene ge diliba. Uri keda ni huil niu. Tudi boil niu. Hechan didi boil niu. Tu besa aidaha. Ya nathau ha no seneni. Asi teneno tuos nire no se dire hulsia suwa. Sanare thiliare. Ya selo tinali le thieba. Masiru sindu. Amen.
Masicho, Ernie, for starting us off in a really good way. The Seal River Watershed Alliance welcomes this step in the journey to protect the watershed. The Saisi Dene First Nation, Northlands Dene Suchene First Nation, Barrenlands First Nation, and Opipanapiwin Cree Nation have come together to create an Indigenous protected area. We are asserting our inherent rights to steward these lands for our communities, for the caribou, and for all people. As we know, 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity is on lands cared for by Indigenous peoples. Recognizing and respecting Indigenous decision-making on the land is essential for our shared future. The 4 First Nations of the Seal River Watershed are offering a gift to the world, the gift of sustaining one of the largest intact watersheds left on the planet. The health of our lands, the health of our people are intertwined. Our cultures and languages are rooted in our relationship to the caribou and the land. And protecting the watershed means protecting the spirit of our people. The Indigenous protected area will help us honor our elders and create opportunities for our youth, and it will generate jobs and sustainable prosperity for our communities. Of course, today we remember our elders and the places we come from. Creating the Seal River Watershed Indigenous Protected Area will help ensure the history of relocation and imposed decision-making remains in the past. Now we are charting a course for the future, and it begins with the First Nations, the Government of Manitoba, and the Government of Canada, working together as partners. We look forward to collaborating and realize the Seal River Watersheds Alliance's vision for our lands and waters. I would like to say masicho to everyone who helped us get here today, all of our partners, our supporters, and our allies. Most importantly, our elders for giving us the guidance to be able to sit here with you all today. Masicho.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Honourable Stephen Guilbeault, Minister of Environment, Climate Change Canada and Minister responsible for Parks Canada, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
I will be making my remarks in both French and English, so those of you who need those devices, they're available across the room. I want to thank Mr. Busido. I want to thank you, Ms. Forster. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Today, we are taking an important step together to protect a treasured place that is vitally important to Indigenous people in Manitoba, but to all of Canada. Je salue également le ministre Wharton qui est avec nous.
Acknowledge Minister Wharton, who is with us virtually, and all members of COP15, the United Nations, and all those who are joining us physically or virtually. It's an honor to be with you today. This is something extremely important. Today, the Seal River Watershed Alliance, the Canadian government and Manitoba province are trying to create a protected area for Indigenous and a national park in this watershed. Here in Montreal, the traditional territory of First Nations are meeting, so I respect the land I'm here, and I acknowledge ancestral territories that have been looking after these lands for immemorial times. The Indigenous are the first custodians of water, land, and water, and working together, we won't be able to protect these resources, delicate, and to have reconciliation. The Alliance is working with the Canadian government and the government from Manitoba to advance the protection of this watershed, one which is still pre-13. This project is a partnership between Indigenous partners, and they are the leaders. The Seal River Watershed,
Ecologically intact watershed, spanning over 50,000 square kilometers, an area roughly the size of Nova Scotia. It includes at least 20 known species at risk, from wolverines, polar bears, grizzly bears, and barren-ground caribou to orcas and lake sturgeon. It is also one of the richest carbon sinks in the world and would add 0.5 percentage point of protected area towards Canada's goal of 30% by 2030. This is huge. This is why it is so crucial for the Seal River Watershed Alliance, the province of Manitoba, the government of Canada, and our Indigenous allies to work together on this initiative. As Minister of Environment and Climate Change and Minister responsible for Parks Canada, the conservation and preservation of lands and waters in Canada is a priority for my government as well as it is for myself. The Government of Canada, in close collaboration with Indigenous partners, stakeholders, and other levels of government, is committed to protecting biodiversity and conserving 25% of inland lands and waters by 25% of marine and coastal areas by 2025, working towards 30 by 30. Nous voulons voir le monde adopter l'objectif de protéger.
Want the world to protect 30% of territories here at COP15, and this objective has to be achieved working in partnership with Indigenous people who are the custodians of water. And this is a new step for a new protected area north of Manitoba, and it shows what we can do and achieve to protect nature when we're working together. Moving forward towards reconciliation for the benefit of First Nations, the First Nations of Isolde Northland and First Nations of Barrenlands and Cree people Napawini and the First Nations of Manitoba, and working together for the benefit of all Canadians. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you, Minister Guilbeault. We'll now be hearing from our next speaker virtually. If you can please direct your attention to the screen, please join me in welcoming the Honourable Jeff Wharton, Minister of Manitoba Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Jan, and also Minister Guilbeault. Great to see you again. Stephanie as well, and all special thank you to Elder Ernie for this wonderful opening prayer as well. As Manitoba's Minister of Environment, Climate and Parks, it is my pleasure to join the Seal River Watershed Alliance and the Government of Canada to announce that we will be undertaking a feasibility assessment for the protection of the Seal River Watershed. I sincerely wish I was able to be with you all in person today to participate in this exciting announcement and partake in all the important conservations and biodiversity throughout the week. Conservation is essential for protecting the rich biodiversity and natural features found across Manitoba, while also creating natural solutions to climate change. Protected and conserved areas give us clean air and water and can help protect our communities during extreme weather events like storms, floods, wildfires brought about by climate change. These areas can also help build stronger relationships with Indigenous people as we continue to work towards advancing our shared goals and promoting truth and reconciliation. I am proud to be able to work with the Seal River Watershed Alliance and the Government of Canada on the future feasibility assessment to learn more about the area and explore the potential for a protected area in the Seal River Watershed. The Seal River Watershed is a truly special place. As one of the world's largest remaining ecologically intact watersheds, it provides an important breeding and migratory habitat for numerous birds, mammals, and other wildlife, highlighting a rich biodiversity. The watershed is also home to local Indigenous peoples, and its protection is essential for sustaining Indigenous knowledge and value systems for generations to come. By working collaboratively with the Seal River Watershed Alliance and local communities, we can incorporate Indigenous knowledge and cultural practices to better understand the watershed and protect the landscape. The Seal River Watershed also provides exceptional natural, cultural, and recreational heritage opportunities that Indigenous-led businesses can promote, helping to realize the economic development opportunities and creation of jobs in the region. As we move forward, the joint feasibility assessment will be undertook in collaboration with our partners here today, and we will enable us to make informed, evidence-based decisions in the Seal River Watershed. This includes gathering data regarding the land and its resources, and as well as biodiversity and the potential for eco and cultural tourism opportunities. I look forward to our next steps working with the Seal River Watershed Alliance and the Government of Canada to provide a framework for a feasibility assessment. This will provide greater knowledge about the region and will result in mutual benefits and informed decisions to protect the watershed. Manitoba is committed to cooperation and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and we must rebuild the relationship on foundation of meaningful dialogue. Exploring the feasibility of a protected area within the Seal River Watershed is an important step, and I am so excited to see what and where we're able to build together. Thank you again. Enjoy the remainder of COP15, and I look forward to our future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Wharton. I think I speak for all of us here today that this is an historic partnership and an exciting opportunity to work together to preserve our pristine Seal River watershed in Manitoba. As we move forward in this important work together, it's utmost important, as Minister Wharton said, that we do so in the spirit of reconciliation with full respect for Indigenous knowledge and traditions. I'm very excited to see what we accomplish and in this joint partnership as we aim to do our part in the global fight against climate change and loss of biodiversity. I'd now like to invite Mr. Marc-André Tremblay, Environment Canada Media Services, to moderate the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Bon après-midi à tous. Avant de passer à la période de questions, voici quelques informations.
So before going to the question session, I would like to invite you to raise your hand so I can give you the floor. We also require you for timing management to have one question. And before asking your question, please introduce yourself and introduce the media that you represent. If your question is addressed to Mrs. Torres, CEO Forester, we require you please to ask your question in English.
Items. When you have a question, first, please raise your hand and wait for me to call on you. Please note also that we are limited on time, so we ask you to keep it to one question and one follow-up. And finally, please state your name and media outlet before asking your question. I will now take your questions. Second row over here.
Hi, Kate Allen from the Toronto Star. So the federal government has made Indigenous-led conservation a priority, and here we see the provincial partners on board. I'm wondering how much of a challenge it will be to get provincial or territorial partners on board for other projects, and how that will play into meeting the targets that you've mentioned. And I'm specifically thinking of Ontario.
Thank you for the question. As I've said before, Canada cannot achieve as a nation the goals we've set for ourselves for 2025 or 2030 without the leadership of Indigenous people when it comes to conservation and protecting nature. And we're working really hard towards achieving this goal. But we also want to work with our provinces and territories to achieve those goals. We need to work with provinces and territories to achieve those goals. Very, very happy. I agree with you. I think today is an historic day for Indigenous people, for Manitoba, and for Canada as a whole. We will have other good news to announce in the very near future on progress that's being made with other jurisdictions in Canada on conservation and on our ability to meet our goals of achieving 25 by 25 and 30 by 30. Different jurisdictions are moving at different pace, but we need to find solutions. We're condemned to find solutions. We are talking about the living conditions on this planet, and to think that we can have prosperous society at the expense of nature and people simply doesn't make any sense. It is something that is globally being recognized. So I would be surprised if we're not able to convince all of the jurisdictions in Canada that this is something that needs to happen. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, Ravi DaCosta, Global Policy Journal. You're announcing a feasibility study. Can you tell us about what the governance arrangement for this for the watershed will be? Your ideal model of that, and how it ensures the interests of Indigenous people. And then supplementary to that, if I may, what resources the Government of Canada or the Province of Manitoba will be providing to Indigenous people to enable them to carry out the work that is required. Thank you.
If I could first just say that this approach is, we're really trying to embody the nation to nation to nation decision making. We are hoping to talk about what shared responsibilities could look like, and we understand that we all come to the table with different things, and we're really trying to have an inclusive approach right now. But we must also always understand that this is Indigenous-led, and this is being brought here by us first. You know, like it's our elders that guided us here to do this work longer than it's this COP15 idea has been happening. And I think remembering those people that came before us to do this work is a really important part today.
On governance, may I turn to you, please?
Yes. So as Stephanie said, this is an Indigenous-led project. But so the government of Canada is really committed to working together with the Indigenous partners in potentially establishing new protected areas. So our commitment is to develop any new protected areas in a cooperative process with Indigenous people, and the governance would reflect that. We're not there yet. What we are announcing today is very initial, is really about us working together to look at all the possibilities, all the studies, the area, and consult with our Indigenous partners and right holders to see if this is something that is feasible and possible for the region. As part of the process, if we decide this is really a possibility, we want to do this together, the next stage is actually negotiate the elements of how that will happen, including the governance models. And they are very important to be co-managed from the beginning and co-developed together.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, if I may, that the Manitoba government really respects that this is an Indigenous-led initiative, and we want to move forward with full respect for the Indigenous people that have been on these lands for generations. And moving forward, as we've said, it's a process. And at this point, we are embarking on the feasibility study, and all steps in the process will be done on a sort of a government-to-government basis with a co-development model that really sees, I think, all partners having sort of shared priorities and vision. So we're really looking forward to moving forward. Thanks.
And if I may, I think if I may speak on behalf of everyone, I don't do that very often, but I think what we're all saying here is that we want to work together to make this a reality in true partnership with under the leadership of Indigenous nations. And in terms of funding, because there was a question about funding, I can commit on behalf of the government of Canada that we will be there to support this project financially, as we have supported other projects such as the ones announced last week by the Prime Minister. So the federal government will be engaged financially, but under the leadership of Indigenous people. So it's not for me here to say, well, this is what we're going to do. We will work together to find and to define those very specific questions you're asking.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. I see some hands. I see someone right here on the right side.
Oh, thank you so much. First, I just love to like to really commend all parties, in particular Saïsti Dene, for their
Could
leadership.
you please identify
Oh,
yourself?
excuse me, Minister. Christopher Dembitsky from Oceans North, and we've been a very small but enthusiastic supporter of Dene on this incredible initiative. The Seal River, as we know, flows into Hudson Bay, into Western Hudson Bay, and into some of the densest beluga habitat on the planet. There have been conversations amongst Inuit, Dene, and Cree, and the community of Churchill on potential protection of the Hudson Bay, of Western Hudson Bay. And I'm just wondering, and I'm looking in particular at the government of Manitoba, if the governments are ready to get to step up and start having a serious conversation about that connected conservation and the importance of that initiative as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, you've pointed out another very special place in the province of Manitoba and the importance of protecting that marine biodiversity. And I believe that the Manitoba government is open to conversations. We know that the Port of Churchill, for instance, is of growing importance on many fronts in the world. And as we're entering a period of somewhat sort of energy security needs, we see rising importance there as well. But I do believe that the province of Manitoba is interested in having conversations and looking at the opportunities in a process, right? Like we're going through a feasibility study here to identify what are the opportunities for protection, as well as what are the things we need to be considering when we make decisions about protection. And it's I can't speak on behalf of the province of Manitoba, but I believe there's an openness to those conversations. So thank you.
If I might add, I know your question was directed at the government of Manitoba, but the federal government, as you know, we have ambitious targets for 2025 and 2030. We're looking for good projects. Many of you have my personal number, so if you have projects that you want to bring forward, you know where to find me. But again, these projects have to be developed under the leadership of Indigenous people. This is very important for us. I believe it is for the government of Manitoba as well. But we're looking for good projects.
Thank you. Ceci conclut maintenant la période de questions. Merci d'avoir été des nôtres aujourd'hui.
This concludes the